Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and happy end of the day. I know it's Monday, so we're very excited, of course, that you have chosen to join us this afternoon for our very first Access Dialogue with ECGP. And I'm very happy to be joined today by a lot of ECGP steering group members who are active in the coalition and are passionate about access to CGP. We'll introduce you to them in just 1 second, just to allow everyone to dial in first before we get started. So let's wait 1 more minute and then we will get into it. In the meantime, we will do a little bit of housekeeping, as I say, although I already tidied my apartment earlier today. We are very happy to keep this interactive. It is, after all, an Access Dialogue, and we want to hear from you as well. So whether you have questions or comments, please use the chat actively. You can chat with the other participants. You can also interact with the speakers here, so you can write questions for them. We will bring you in, not at the end, but throughout the webinar. So as we're going through the different topics, we're very happy for you to either use the chat if you're shy, or you can raise your hand if you want to take the floor. And then we're very happy for you to come in with your thoughts, your comments, questions, etc. And we know this is a very technical topic, so please feel free to share your expertise. Also ask questions if there's something which we went over too quickly. I don't have a scientific background. I am a political scientist, so certainly this is something that I would struggle with sometimes. I see we have the numbers are starting to go up, so we can start jumping into it. So with us today, we have, first and foremost, we have Antonella Cardone. She's the CEO of Cancer Patients Europe, who is very active on this topic and on access to genomic testing in general. Very happy you can join us today, Antonella. We also have Claudio. We also have Claudio Yomi. He's a professor of healthcare management at University of Novara, and we're bringing in the HDA health economist perspective. Great that you can join us today, Claudio. And we have Rosa Giuliani. She's a consultant medical oncology guys in St. Thomas NHS Foundation Trust. I don't know what is happening with the NHS these days. Maybe you can update us as well. But of course, you also have a lot of experience with EU policy, having been active in ESMO previously. Great to have you here today, Rosa.
Hi, everybody.
And finally, we have Veronica Bendere she's the Principal in International Corporate Affairs at Exact Sciences, a company that has been developing advanced diagnostics and bringing them to the European market now for many years. And of course, one of the founding companies of the European Coalition for Access to Comprehensive Genomic Profiling. Great to have you here today. And my name is Matthias Olsen. I am working at UCOP, and we have been quite active in setting up this coalition over the past couple of years. You might have heard from me in the past. I will try not to talk too much today because we have a great panel with us today. So we are going to go through 3 key topics. We'll try to structure this dialogue somewhat. And the background for this is that we have just developed our recommendations. And the first recommendation is to really bring awareness around an understanding of what CGP is. And one of the key questions that often comes to mind is, after what is CGP, so it's comprehensive genomic profiling. Second is, what is the value of comprehensive genomic profiling? So that's really what we're here to discuss for 1 hour. We have tried to structure it somewhat, so we'll go through the conversation in these 3 parts. Starting with the clinical value and patient outcomes. I think I will remove the slides just so we can see each other. It's probably nicer. It's still kind of small, okay. It didn't do a big difference. I should also say that we are recording this webinar, so just be aware of that. You choose whether you want to participate in the chat or not. Maybe we'll keep it up. Yes. So just to start this off, I will be turning to you, Rosa, to bring in the clinician perspective. So, for you as an oncologist, when you're taking decisions in the clinic for patients, what does the value mean for you of CGP? What is the clinical value to you?
So it's a very difficult question because
Mm,
if you think about it, it's a very also broad question. And, again, I'm happy that we are tackling this question from different angles, because in general, you can think that, adding value it means that we add something that is relevant to the individuals, which can be a patient or an healthy individuals and so on. By which we will help them to live a better life and so on. Now, if
mm,
I think of the value as a clinician, I always remind to myself that, since starting working as a clinician, but even more lately, we promise the implementation of our dream, which is the implementation of precision oncology. And this is a deal that we make to beat cancer. And I think when I'm trying to not to use what we can use, for instance, as NGS. I think that we are fighting in a bit of an odd way, because basically we are not acknowledging how cancer change. We are not acknowledging the heterogeneity of cancer, which can actually be understood better, only use more sophisticated system compared to what we do currently in clinic. So I cannot in 2026 continue to treat breast cancer, which is the cancer that I'm specialized with, the same way that I used to do 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where we knew almost nothing of the cancer heterogeneity. But if we do not use all the tools that we have potentially in our hands, we just keep fighting the battle in a very old-fashioned way. And we know that cancer cells, we keep thinking, and I think that this is a shift that really is necessary, has already started somehow, but I think that NGS can help in shifting even quicker and more. So we keep thinking of breast cancer, but actually, again, we know that in a certain type of cancer, under the pressure of time, treatment, different sites, and so on, the cancer is extremely heterogeneous. And if we do not capture that heterogeneity, we are just, treating the cancer in a very suboptimal way. So for me, value means to have in hands tools that will allow me to capture the cancer heterogeneity, my enemy heterogeneity, and so to fight it. And we have proof that actually this concept works, because there is a proof of principle I'll consider is a Rome trial, which is an Italian trial. I mean, I came from Rome, so I'm a bit partisan here, but is a proof of principle, is a small phase 2 trial that actually showed that when patients are every treated and they receive genomic testing, randomizes them to be guided, to treatment being guided by the genomic testing, NGS, versus basically standard of care, which means chemotherapy. There is a difference in response. There is a difference in survival. It's a small difference because, for instance, in that case was a heavily pretreated population, and that's why I say it's a proof of principle. There are so many other way that genomic testing, comprehensive genomic testing can help with, for instance, for cancer of unknown primary, for rare cancer. So there are specific, let's say, niche, which is not really a niche, but even for the broader patient population, I mean, it's very depressing for me once I use the first or second line of targeted treatment to say, okay, no, you know what, now we are back to square one, and I need to give you something that is totally, is one size fits all, and actually it doesn't fit. I'm not saying that the system is perfect, because from a scientific point of view, we are moving a really faster pace than other environments, but it's also complex for oncologists to be at pace and understanding very well the complexity of comprehensive genomic testing. When are we going to do it? What it implies? What if we find something that is not druggable in the way that we hope it could be druggable? So there are all these questions that, of course, deserves our attention. But if we never address it, we will still, keeping the fight with, very unsophisticated way. And the last point that I want to quickly touch is that I always hear like the cost of doing it. Well, guys, let me tell you that if I do nothing, the cost will possibly be zero, but I do not know if we will be happy about the results. Now, even without going to that extreme, I think that we need good, let's say, objective, good proof. And this is something that is really massive. It is a massive request that I'm asking Claudio and all colleagues working in health economics about understanding not that much which is the cost of doing, which is easy to calculate, but which is the cost of not doing, which is more difficult, is an hidden area if you want. But I think that we need to go there as a narrative to understand which is actually the real value. And I think I will stop here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rosa. I think that was very concrete, and also with those examples you brought, I mean, it really sounds to me like this is becoming a critical tool in providing precision oncology for patients. And Antonella, I would like to bring you in here. So, from a patient perspective, what does access to CGP represent? Do you agree with what Rosa have already said?
Thank you, Matthias. Yes, of course, I agree with all that Rosa anticipated. But from the patient perspective, there is even more. So I would like to start with defining very quickly. So what is a comprehensive genomic profiling? So it is a cutting-edge approach, a molecular testing technique that utilizes a generation sequencing to analyze hundreds of genes simultaneously. So with just one test, we can detect several genomic alterations. What does this mean for the patients? I mean, it's the definition in itself is clear and provides value for the patients, because this means that with just one test, potentially one biopsy, we can detect precisely the kind of tumor, the kind of mutation that the patient has, and that means, as Rosa mentioned, we can deliver the targeted therapy for that patient. What does this mean? That we can reduce time. So I do not want to speak of costs. I want to speak about time, because time is fundamental when it comes to cancer. So imagine a patient who has a cancer diagnosis and has to navigate among different tests before identifying the precise kind of cancer or mutation that the patient has. And unfortunately, what we hear more and more is that instead of delivering a test, in the healthcare system, they make different attempts on different treatments before even prescribing a genomic testing. So to us, this is unbearable. What does this mean for a patient? That potentially patients take chemo, for instance, which is the most common treatment, without any benefit. And only after, in the clinics, they assess that the chemotherapy was not of any benefit, then they prescribe a test, a genomic test. I mean, this is, for us, is unbearable. And it's an issue with, so this means that we deliver a targeted treatment only after the tumor has increased, because time has passed, after the body of the patient has been deteriorated through chemo without any benefit. So at that stage, even the targeted treatment that would have had a very positive impact if it was delivered in the first stage is delivered when there are additional biological hurdles, even on that treatment. So, I mean, this is really the value for the patient, anticipating the targeted treatment so that the targeted treatment can have a higher impact, reducing the burden on the patients and on the healthcare system, because chemotherapy delivered without any benefit comes with a cost, not only on the patients, but with the cost on the healthcare system because of the need of using the healthcare system more.
I think that's a very interesting way to talk about. So Rosa mentioned what is the cost of not testing, and I think we will turn to Claudia soon to hear about that. And you mentioned this time aspect. So it's lost, it's gain time versus lost time, and having the right correct treatment earlier. I wanted to also ask you, because I know that Cancer Patients Europe is quite active on these topics, and you know we're talking about increasing the understanding and awareness of CGP and the value. So in your mind, what role does patient organizations such as CP and your member associations play here?
One of the recommendations also that was presented in the white paper is about raising awareness. And one role that is very important to us, and we take it very seriously, is raising awareness, not only among the cancer patient community, which is already a huge burden, and it's fundamental, but also among policymakers. So awareness among policymakers is huge, because is of huge importance, because only if we have policymakers fully on board and fully understanding what genomic testing implies for the benefit of the healthcare system and the benefit of the patients, they can act. So what we can do is we have regular social media campaigns, we organize webinars, we have bilateral conversations with policymakers, and this is not the end, because I mean, we have done a survey a few years ago with Exact Sciences, and that survey tells us a lot in terms of the importance of shared decision making, the importance of not concluding our commitment once the genomic test is reimbursed and available. But it is really on making it accessible to patients, prescribing it to patients. From this survey that we did, it came out that 4 out of 5 breast cancer patients eligible for this genomic test in countries like Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and the UK were not even told by their oncologist that the genomic test was an option to them. So again, this means that potentially 4 out of 5 women with breast cancer took chemo without any benefit, only the side effects. I mean, this is really unbearable for us. It's something that we cannot ignore.
And one can say, is this due to a lack of understanding of the value, or is it a lack of an awareness? But to know the value, you need to be aware of it in the first place. I think these go hand in hand. It's a very, very good example there, Antonella. Veronica, I want to bring you in. So you've been called on here, and I wanted to really ask you about, it's clear from what Rosa is sharing that this is a tool that is really being used in the clinic now. But what is your feeling? Is the technology as such evolving faster than the regulators are able to keep up with it? So is the HTA systems too slow to adapt to the pace of innovation of the technologies? And
you're absolutely right, Matthias. Fully agree with what you are saying. Definitely one of the biggest disconnects that I see now, it lies between the pace of scientific innovation and the pace of healthcare system adaptation. And even if Rosa mentioned that even oncologists do not always understand the whole complexity of genomic testing, what can we say then about other stakeholders, about policymakers who receive a lot of scientific innovation information on daily basis from the pharmaceutical companies who develop new treatments, from diagnostic companies. So, and to say nothing about patients who also would need a very easy to digest information explaining the benefits of this new innovation to them. So definitely we know as our group that evidence supporting precision oncology has evolved significantly, tremendously. And we understand that many cancers are driven by increasingly complex molecular alterations. And treatment decisions are becoming more and more dependent on this genomic information, right? So in many ways, precision oncology is only as precise as the diagnostic information available to clinician. So this is really the big value of CGP. It's not just the data it generates, it's the decision of the oncologist that it enables. So in practice, we see a lot of often strong clinical support. However, the implementation might be hindered often by fragmented reimbursement frameworks. As we know, there is a big disconnect from one EU country to another, and we know there are definitely different speeds of bringing new innovation into daily practice. Of course, there are inconsistent testing policies, and of course, to what Antonella is saying, the most important, there are different levels of stakeholder awareness. And maybe another important element, and I think we will have a separate conversation about how we can break the existing barriers. But I think that one of the big barriers for all of us as this cross stakeholder group is to look into how we define the value and how we can ensure that we bring the right communication and right explanation of the value to different groups, because as Antonella just said, so the value for patients is time to the treatment. The value for oncologists, as Rosa mentioned, is finding the right treatment for the right patient, and that's the biggest value. However, if we speak to the payer, cost efficiency would be the biggest value. So that might be a different language that we need to bring into conversation when we talk to this type of stakeholders. Or if we talk to a policymaker, for them, maybe the biggest value would be how we ensure sustainability of the system and how we ensure proper education process of the clinicians and lab specialists. So it is a very multi-dimensional conversation, and that is why I'm very excited to be a part of this panel today, because I think we have a lot of right views around the table, and this is how we should approach it, right? All together as different actors.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I mean, this is really good. I'm glad I brought you in there towards the end, because that's a really nice reflection on each point that is. From IG. I mean, he's been active in the chat and said he absolutely agrees with Antonella. Do you want to come in, Oscar, and share what you said in the chat? Happy to bring you in here on the floor. It's good comments. Not, I'm happy to. I think we have to. Sorry, we have to unmute you. There we go. We are. Hello, Mike. So now you should be able to unmute yourself, and you can come in if you want to. Okay, you cannot. No worries. No pressure. So he said that basically, you know, a lot of the value CGP falls outside of these traditional dimensions of value, and what we consider the value to decision makers, to those who make decisions based on the policies in place. and as such, they cannot consider the value of clinical trial uptake or potential research value of secondary use of data. And this is where we need to really help the policymakers to understand the potential value of CGP. And I think this is a really good segue to you, Claudio, because now we've heard, what is the opportunity cost of not providing? What is the cost of not testing? What is the cost of not providing CGP? What is the value of this time dimension here? What is the value to the patients? What is the emphasis on cost effectiveness? And what is the emphasis to that broader societal value, which maybe is what's missing from the conversation? So Claudio, can you help us understand a little bit where the HTA perspective is currently and how they're thinking about incorporating these different elements? What are some of the most important domains to be considered?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having invited me. Yes, I mean, the first point I would like to stress is we have a framework, a general framework, which is health technology assessment that in principle include, apart from some aspects that have been stressed by Oscar, include all the dimensions that have been considered on an individual or each single stakeholder point of view, because the health technology assessment should provide evidence on the severity of the disease, the level of unmet need, the comparative value from a clinical and safety viewpoint, the cost effectiveness, the budget impact, the organizational impact, and the impact from the patient perspective, that is looking at the outcome on patients and looking at the preferences by patients. So in principle, technology assessment should include and incorporate all these dimensions. For sure, there are additional value which are represented, the possibility to include patients into clinical trials, I would say the other opportunity to implement and enhance researchers. The big issue is that all these domains are very differently considered by those who play their role in the healthcare system. So when we talk about payers, there are very different actors in the payer system. There are those who make comparative assessment and decide whether a new technology has a comparative value. There are those who take appraisals and decisions about the prioritization process, that this technology should be prioritized compared to the others, and the true payers who look at both the cost effectiveness of value for money and budget impact dimensions. So what I would suggest in general is integrating both value for money and budget impact consideration, because we cannot deny the value for money in the longer term, but we have to consider also the short-term budget impact considerations. Pathway, one of the most important aspects that these technologies put into the system is allowing access to treatment that are more effective and more safe than the others. So basically, if you want to evaluate the cost effectiveness of one diagnostic tools compared to the others, it's important to consider the whole clinical pathway and not just concentrating on the diagnostics processes. But despite of this, there is quite diffuse evidence that if we want to detect a wider range of mutations, next generation sequences or CGP are for sure less costly than a stepwise approach. This has been demonstrated by many papers. However, this evidence should be embedded into real world. So one of the most critical aspects of economic evaluation is that they, in general, start with the idea that the system is an ideal condition for managing the technologies. So what should be included into any analysis is the level of capacity and capability of centers, the acceptance rate of these diagnostic tools by patients, the time to access for patients, because it may happen that this time to access is not immediate, the investments which are required. So what is important is moving from theoretical economic evaluation to real world based. And real world, I do not mean that the models should be populated by the real world evidence on the outcome of the treatment. But real world means that you should include into any sensitivity analysis the possibility that the system is not perfect and completely ready to manage these technologies. So I think that this is the key point that should be considered. And for sure, I agree with Veronica. The messages coming from HTA is different depending on the stakeholders receiving these messages. What is important in order to enable payers, the true payers, who are those who pay for technologies, hearing from this voice that is looking at a broader perspective when they take into consideration the cost dimension, is first of all adopting a wider viewpoint in the way they consider cost. Because this is one of the most critical aspects. The societal impact of technologies are in many circumstances disregarded by payers because they look, if we are lucky, and if there is not very diffuse silos budgeting and pro, they are very focused on the healthcare system and not what happens outside the healthcare system. And the second one is adopting, this is very difficult for payers, a long-term approach, because a short-term for sure does not consider the economic advantages of having a new technologies that by definition is an investment for the future, is not a treatment which is immediately available for a patient that would die in 2 or 3 months.
Claudio, so much to pick up on here. Thank you so much. I mean, we could ask you to keep talking for 30 more minutes. I think we would all be the richer for it. But I wanted to pick up on just a few things that you said. And the one thing is you mentioned that you know, a lot of times you will be looking at what is the ability of this diagnostic to select a treatment. So it's the actionability, and I think this is driving a lot of HTA's decisions, right? So what is the value of having the diagnostic if it's not tied to a pharmaceutical, which is also reimbursed and available? And I think this seems to be driving a lot of decisions. And then the question is, if you look at CGP and it is a lot of studies, you said, are all of the studies are showing that CGP is cost effective versus sequential testing or hotspot testing, for example. So it's more cost effective to do the CGP right away rather than going through several tests and oh, we didn't find what we needed here. Okay, the second one, we didn't find what we needed here. At what point do we just accept that CGP is cost effectiveness across the board for sequential testing and hotspot testing, or do we still require, okay, but now can you prove also with this study that in this specific, for this specific cancer and this specific patient group, it is also cost effective?
First of all, you mentioned one of the key issues of, in general, next generation sequencing, say complete genome profiling, that is having an actionable treatment. So what is important, that there is a high risk that mutations are detected, and these mutations, for example, have no treatment. But this mutation could be treated in clinical trials, if any. So that is another way of extending the value of CGP. As far as the drug-specific or patient-specific cost effectiveness, it's very hard to tell you, because when we talk about it, when you say it is cost effective or not cost effective, for sure, or by definition, we have to define a threshold. Because when we say is more cost effective, okay, it seems that it is bringing a reasonable higher cost compared to the benefit. But reasonable higher cost compared to the benefit increment implies at the end a threshold which is well accepted in the community. In this sense, the cost effectiveness could be a driver of decision. I think that thresholds are useful because thresholds could help deciding, but they should not be the only one criteria to decide, because I take the example of medicines. If we consider threshold as a unique way of deciding whether a treatment is cost effective or not, most of the orphan medicines would have never been reimbursed by at least most of the European countries, because for sure, the price of medicines for rare diseases is high compared to the others, simply because the target population is lower. So when we talk about a lower target population, by definition, there is something that is not consistent with the rigid thresholds. So I appreciate thresholds. We have not, for example, in Italy, a threshold to the cost effectiveness ratio, but this should be integrated with other dimensions, including, for example, the severity of the disease, the level of unmet need. So that could be a solution. And honestly, for example, very recently has been published a systematic review of framework that has been implemented for next generation sequencing and for comprehensive genome profiling, showing that there's opportunity to integrate cost-effectiveness ratio with other dimensions, taking a more informed decision. However, we cannot deny that cost effectiveness and budget impact consideration should be in part as part of the decisions, because otherwise we cannot prioritize the technologies that are available into the healthcare system, and we are not efficient from an allocative viewpoint.
Thank you, Claudio. Great answers. I want to go over to you, Veronica, because and then I would like to bring in anyone amongst our speakers or anyone in the audience as well, if you have any questions or comments. So, Veronica, I wanted to ask you, you know, as a company, so when you will be looked to from the HTAs and payers, they will be asking you to provide evidence and data and the studies, etc., right, to actually demonstrate this value. So, you know, when we're thinking about all these different dimensions which you have been discussing, how do you see that? Do you feel that you have sufficient guidance in what each country would like to see? Is when you talk about fragmented HTA requirements, you know, is everyone asking for different things? So you have to pick and choose. How are you navigating this communication of value to different stakeholders across Europe?
Yeah, thank you, Matthias. This is a great question, and it resonates well with what Claudio also was saying, that with very new science, it's not so easy to show a traditional way of cost efficiency through quick outcomes, especially as we see that CGP is increasingly moving beyond being a standalone diagnostic test. So today it's more of a foundational platform, and as Claudio says, so it enables clinical trials decision making, it enables research, future research and innovation, or overall healthcare system transformation. So it is not easy often to bring a very simple cost efficiency evidence for such a complex and diverse tool. So what I'm also thinking about, that maybe for us as companies, we have also to take a step back in when we focus on generating evidence, we might be introducing additional parameters that matter to specific stakeholders. And here again, so I think I'll be talking about collaboration all the time. So here again, collaboration with HTA experts is critical to see which parameters make sense and show this value, and how we can introduce them into research early on to bring this evidence. And again, I'm sure it's the same with patients, and I would really be delighted to give also baton on this to Antonella and to Rosa to see, because again, we cannot really show efficiency in a simple patient outcome KPI when every patient journey is different, and with something as complex as CGP, we are looking across the entire patient journey, right? So we are not evaluating just the moment the biomarker is identified. So this is not the end point of bringing a cost efficiency story into the light. And I'm happy to see that Rosa is nodding. So maybe you would like to comment and continue from oncologist standpoint this concept.
So I was thinking, so first of all, I don't want to show up, but let me show up a little bit. So I'm in Brussels now. We are assessing new approach methodologies, okay, which incorporate also genomics, but really, if we struggle to incorporate NGS in our clinical practice, we will never, ever, ever be able to bring the science to the next level. So, guys, I really like all your talks about, showing the benefit and so on. But here we are talking of two different planets. So, in one planet, we are just, pushing our feet on the accelerator to try to understand mechanism of resistance and toxicity, when to expose a patient or not, because this is a fundamental right, no? Am I doing good exposing a patient to something that I already know that has 10% chance of working when I maybe be in a different position, which was what Antonella was saying before. So we need to make up our mind, and then we need also to acknowledge that this is let's say, an uncertain territory, and by default it is, because many of the patient population, for instance, when the discussion peak or blah, 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 many of the patient population which are defined in a way biologically driven, and this is NGS is really important, they are not population that we are used to, historically to have a comparators and so on, which make, any traditional approach in showing the benefit even more difficult. I really like, Veronica, your point about this is time we always criticize the fragmented system of the HTA, but we always have to criticize our fragmented system of going step by step. It's a matter of having a long-term trajectory. And what I want to say is that I'm not as an oncologist talking of standing alone one-time test doing NGS, because cancer basically is heterogeneous at the time of diagnosis, is not the same that 6 months later or whatever. So we need to test and retest. Okay, so we need to really incorporate this in our practice. And of course, many of the times that I read the test and I say, okay, I'm in trouble, what I'm going to do, because that we cannot even promise necessarily that this is going to have an immediate impact. It could be more, as Claudio was saying, in terms of clinical trials, for instance, participation, rather than having the druggable mutation that we all wish for. But still, if we don't do it, we will never know. So it needs to be part of our clinical practice, because then otherwise we will always remain with the small data set that can be as perfect as we wish, but it's not what we need in practice.
And if I may, from the patient perspective at this point, I also believe that this cost effectiveness analysis are fundamental, are important, but they can be, can I say, tailored, driven, because you can find a model to justify anything. So what is really needed is political will, essentially, when it comes to introducing a new treatment, a new diagnostic test. There must be a political strategy, a political view from policymakers on what is a priority for the country, for their people. So this is, to me, this is the basis on which to build. Then, when we talk about costs, what about countries that reimburse the test and do not reimburse the treatment that that is identified with the test, or vice versa? There is also the case of countries in Europe that reimburse the treatment and do not reimburse the test. So I think that we need to look at all this. And then when, I mean, the example that I brought, when a test is reimbursed and available, but not accessible, because the oncologist does not believe, I mean, I think this is the reason, does not believe that the test is appropriate at that moment, is really necessary for the patient in that part of the diagnosis or the treatment pathway. So I think that there are so many different pieces of the puzzle that need to be aligned And we all together have a role to play for each one of us in this landscape. But I mean, I really believe that we need to align all the different visions, all the different angles in order to make this successful. Because each one of us now have put forward arguments that are all valid, all very important for each our own perspective, a stakeholder group perspective. But I mean, like at a central policy level, they should really embed and listen to all of those different perspectives and develop, I mean, and actionate based on being active around those perspectives. And those perspectives are not opinions. This is another important point. Those perspectives are all evidence-based. So they are supported by evidence. So they are not opinions. So this is also the other point that's important and needs to be made more transparent, more evident to policymakers.
Yes,
may
please,
I add
Claudio.
just two quick comments. The first one is that one of the key aspects that should be taken into consideration and integrating the decision on reimbursement for the whole pathway, because we have systems where all technologies are evaluated and reimbursed by the same authority, and others where there is a clear split between those who decide the reimbursement of medicines, medical devices, and others. So integrating them, it will be very important. This not necessarily has a solution, a final solution, but this is a first step. The second one is looking at what happens once the reimbursement has been implemented. Because, for example, in Italy, a diagnostic procedure could be reimbursed, but at a regional level, there are issues to manage afterwards. So it's important looking at the access pathway of any new technologies. And the final part, I agree, Antonella, cost effectiveness analysis is something which is sometimes not particularly clear because they are based on models, but believe me, is a way of trying to incorporate all the relevant dimension, not necessarily to define the incremental cost effective ratio, which is the most important information they provide, but to put into the same analysis all the possible data that are available in order to understand at the end the value for money. And remember, for any payers, what is important is allocating a limited budget to the best alternative possible to maximize level of health. And cost effectiveness is not the solution, but is a tool to try to detect this and driving at the end investments by decision maker. Unfortunately, the political will is not necessarily aligned, not with single technology, but with the necessary investments in healthcare as a whole. So this is the very starting critical point.
Claudio, this is good. I mean, this is exactly what I wanted to pick up on, is this political will which you are talking about, because we've heard now all of these different perspectives, and of course, as whether you're a clinician, you want to make the best decision for your patient. Whether you're a patient, you want to make sure you receive the best treatment option, or that you avoid receiving a treatment which there's not going to be any benefit, and it's just going to be a lot of toxicity without any of the benefits of the treatment. Or if you're a company, you really believe in this product, you want to make sure that you can bring it to the market and make sure that patients in the end up benefiting from it. I mean, all of these different perspectives, it's difficult. So I have a view about maybe how we can bring these different perspectives together, but I want to ask all of you, how do we integrate all of these different perspectives into a next actionable step to get access to CGP? If you want to think about it a little bit, you can, and I can maybe float my idea in the meantime.
Matthias, come on, you are dying to talk. Go ahead. Come on, Matthias, we knew it.
I am. No, but I think actually it's not my idea. It's Antonella and Claudia. You were talking about the political will. It's the political will. This is what we need. We need some direction from the policymakers to say that we are willing to spend this money. We are willing to actually spend money, and maybe in the end it will not be perfectly cost effective. Okay? Or maybe in the end, maybe it didn't benefit this specific patient type, or it wasn't cost effective, so whatever. But we need that political will to try to actually bring these technologies into our healthcare system so that we can have experience with them. And from that real world setting, I think we will have a wealth of data. We are setting up now the European health data space, where genomic data will be integrated from 2031. You will have health insurance data, claims data, hospital data, electronic patient records. I remember Antonella back a couple of years back, we were talking about this, and it seemed like a fantasy, but finally this is coming. Europe is doing this. So if we have that political will and that courage to maybe integrate it, then we can look at that data from all of those different perspectives. But we need that political will to really to help us to provide the budget to fund it, to bring it into the clinic and to align us. I think that's a bit where the answer is laying.
Yes, what has been done in the past, at least in Italy, for example, for NGS, is providing a dedicated fund. As a health economist, I don't like dedicated funds. I prefer having a unique budget that those who have to take decisions allocate according to the best decisions. But sometimes you have to invest something for having something which is promising and may provide the system a step forward. So basically what could be done is implementing a dedicated fund, but it is important understanding what is done with dedicated fund and the results which are expected and so far and so forth. Because as you know, finding out a dedicated fund within total healthcare budget is not particularly easy. So if there is a strong political will to invest in this area, considering that complete genome profiling in some fields is not useful for guiding treatment, but also to predict the risk, but also to using as a prognostic measure. So it is a broader aspect that should be considered. This could be an option. Obviously, if this is the European will, this is all something which can support the local or national payers, considering that at the end, this is a matter of political negotiation, as you know, because any year we have a budgetary law trying to allocate the resources to specific dedicated funds for each single part of the government expenditure.
Well, for me, a dedicated fund is relevant only if it is seen as a sort of emergency fund and a preliminary step towards integrating the budget allocated for CGP into the overall budget, because otherwise it can create huge inequalities. Like if you need the test within the first 6 months or 8 months when the budget is available, then you get it. Otherwise, the budget, the cap is finished, and then you're stuck. And unfortunately, from the perspective, we see this happening. We see this happening in several countries. And this is not good. Or even countries, there are countries where the cost is shared between the central healthcare system and the hospital. And this doesn't work because the hospital has no interest in then prescribing the test because it's partially on its own budget. There are, so this hybrid, I could say, forms of budgeting for CGP to me are good only if they mean the beginning of a more stable entry. So that it's like a pilot, like they can last 1 year, 2 years, but then those should be the leadway into the overall healthcare budget. I think that this is the way we see it, because otherwise it can create inequalities or hurdles on the system, even more than nothing.
Antonella, I fully agree with you, and that's why this should be accompanied by clear indicators on how the system should systematically integrate the new technology into the healthcare system. But this is the same for many other aspects, not only healthcare technology, but also healthcare services that have been implemented through dedicated funds, provided that clear indicators of exit strategy and incorporated into the current budget allocated for healthcare should be identified. So I completely agree with you. I consider that as a health economist, again, talking about dedicated fund is something which is not particularly popular. So it's not easy for me talking about dedicated funds.
Already we are merging the different perspectives into something new, and that's really great to see this in practice. And maybe just to offer with that equity perspective, if such a fund is set up at the EU level with pooled funding as well, perhaps it can also ensure more equitable access across all of the member states, not just for some of the larger countries or the ones with more ability to pay, even though there might be willingness. Rosa and Veronica, I want to bring you in here towards the end. If you have any other perspectives on this fund idea, I think this.
No, I mean, so I don't want any niche, because we keep making the same mistake over and over. So basically, testing is it's not like second, level problem. So testing is us treating. If I cannot test, I cannot treat in the way that we should do right now. So if we keep talking of this sort of niche mentality we are not addressing the problem in its complexity. And if we cannot manage the integration on NGS, which is really quite, let's say, easy, we cannot manage the integration of much more complex technologies that really have the potential to help patients, but they will never make it. So for me, I would say that testing is us treating. I'm interested as an oncologist in policy, because in principle, policy should be the implementation of science, but it's not happening at the speed that it should. And I thought that we already have a political will with the Beating Cancer Plan. Where has gone this will? So, I mean, this is what, as an oncologist, the question that I have in mind.
Excellent point. Nothing to add. Veronica, maybe you give us offer some final words here.
Yeah, and I think we are making a bit of a circle and coming back to the first speech from Antonella about the importance of awareness and education, because to what Rosa is saying, so and Beating Cancer Plan and all of the initiatives, I think that precision oncology is a bit of buzzword these days, right? We cannot say there is lack of understanding that a new science is evolving. However, often especially in decision makers' minds, it's connected mostly to breakthrough therapies. If we see media coverage from ASCO, it's all about amazing presentation of this therapy, that therapy. However, I think there is a lack of understanding that this is critical to have a breakthrough therapy. However, we need to ensure that right patients should be matched to this breakthrough therapy and not like one size fits all. So a lot of education from all of us is needed. And again, back to what Antonella was saying, that access is not always equal implementation. So maybe there is a political will, there is reimbursement pathway, and in theory, it's accessible for patients, but it's not in the routine clinical practice. And again, this is another gap, most probably in education and alignment. So I think that as a next step, we definitely should all work together in defining how we can bring forward this education from our sides.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you so much, everyone, for bringing some really valuable perspectives to this discussion. We are unfortunately out of time, but I wanted to just mention just in the very end that we have been referring to this white paper of ECGP. You can find it here. There's a QR code, or you go to ecgp.eu. and you can learn more about what we are doing as a coalition. We are not just talking about value in the virtual space. We are also engaging with a lot of the people that are involved in implementing genomic testing, precision oncology at the country level in Italy, in Spain, and in France as well, together with our great steering group members. So again, thank you so much to you, Claudia, Rosa, Veronica, and Antonella. Thank you so much for joining today. I really enjoyed this discussion, and we will continue it at another date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.